Hello, and welcome to a post-CPAC Everything's Terrible edition of the EveryJoe podcast, hashtag EJPC, your political safe space, where we're going to attempt to not only, at this point, not even bother making sense of the news for the past week, but make sense of the news of the past 24 hours. I got two of the best and two of my favorites to follow on Twitter with me. First, he's the assistant online editor for commentary, Noah Rothman. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And the managing editor from RedState.com, and a person who every time he posts something, I like tweeting a picture of someone kicking a hornet's nest because that's what he has the habit of doing, Leon Wolf.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So when I had originally came up with the concept of the show and getting you two specifically on, it was Sunday morning. Ted Cruz just had a great night, and we figured, hey, it's time to have the conversation. You know, is it Cruz? Is it Rubio? How do we get together? And it was clear that the not Trump people were rallying behind Cruz. And then last night happened, and like I said, everything's terrible. So I guess, Noah, we'll start with you. Just your quick synopsis of where we are with the race right now.
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well. It doesn't look like Marco Rubio has a path forward. I'd be very surprised if he gets out of the race before Florida, but a lot of people seem to speculate that he's going to be doing that, and I don't have any inside information, so who knows. Donald Trump's path to the nomination is still not secure. He needs 53% of the remaining delegates. He can be stopped. Even if he wins Florida and Ohio, he can be stopped from getting 1237, albeit it'll get really close. But the last non-Trump candidate standing is definitely going to be Ted Cruz at this point. We don't know what John Kasich is thinking. I don't know how long he can cruise along. He's been doing that without any money for a really long time. So who knows when he's going to get out of the race, but he doesn't have a path forward either. I suspect Marco Rubio will be done after Florida. And then everybody's going to coalesce reluctantly around Ted Cruz. There's still a lot of bad blood, but the alternative is certainly far worse for the anti-Trump forces. And I don't really know whether or not that yields him a victory. Ted Cruz has had a lot of electoral hiccups. His theory of the race that would revolve around evangelicals turning out for him en masse simply hasn't materialized. It was proven false. And he doesn't have a new theory of the electorate to really rally around yet. So it's very much a last-ditch effort to stop Trump, and it feels like a last-ditch effort.
I just want to point out that as we're recording this, Marco Rubio may or may not be dropping out as we speak. There's conflicting reports on Fox News. There's conflicting reports on Twitter. And knowing my luck, we're going to finish recording, and then this entire show is going to go to waste because he will have already dropped out and endorsed like John Kasich or something.
Should have said that before I went through my whole spiel saying I don't think that's going to happen.
But okay, Leon, I know you had voted for Rubio in Tennessee, and you had wrote an article about endorsing him. And I know you had just recently wrote an article how it's time to, time for people to rally behind Cruz. I guess a two-part question. One, how does that happen? And two, is it too late to move RedState Gathering for a week when my sister is not giving birth?
Well, how does it happen in terms of me changing my opinion on that? Is that?
No, how does it happen with how do you see like an endorsement of Cruz happening and like the two sides actually coming together?
Well, I don't think that the bad blood between Rubio and Cruz personally is as bad as it is appearing to play out on the campaign trail. And I think that as you've watched this entire, kind of campaign play out, Cruz and Rubio are not really all that great or even invested in hiding their body language. And when the two of them have disagreed even really vehemently during the course of the debate, you can see that they really more or less respect each other and are coming at each other from that. I mean, even when Rubio was calling Cruz a liar and Cruz was doing the same thing back and forth, you didn't see kind of the open disrespect, I thought, that you saw on the face of Rubio, for instance, when he would debate Rand Paul and was dealing with Rand Paul and those kinds of things. So I think that at the end of the day, really it's more bad blood between the supporters of Rubio and Cruz than it is between the two men themselves. I get the sense that they get along well in the Senate and are personal friends, and both of them are adults enough to realize that they've both just been trying to win the nomination, and all's fair in love and war. So I think that and I will say there have been a number of kind of crazy reports coming out today. The one that I actually have some information about that is true is that there's a Washington Post story that came out this afternoon about Jeb Bush attempting to get all 4 candidates together for a meeting. I have talked to people who are at least used to be on his now failed presidential campaign who have confirmed that he was attempting to do that a couple of days ago. So I don't know whether that meeting is actually going to happen, but I do know that it is something that has been in Jeb's mind and that he has been trying to push and to get people together. So yeah, I guess what I have to say is that really I hope so. I really hope that somebody can come together and broker this thing, because as much as, I don't like John Kasich, and as much as, maybe we, might think that Rubio would be a better general election candidate, certainly, than Ted Cruz against Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump would be a party-ending disaster, would be a disaster for the conservative movement for a whole, and I just don't know that the country really as a whole would survive him being the Republican nominee for president. So I hope something is done sooner rather than later for people to put aside their egos and come together on some sort of unity ticket and agreement. And I think that Ted Cruz, like him or not, has made the case that he should be the guy that folks should rally around right now. And let me go back to something Noah said, because I think this is important. There are actually kind of some conflicting calculations depending upon, there's some things that have to yet to shake out. What I saw is that Trump needs something like 56 or 57% of the delegates from here on out to get to 1237. Ted Cruz, I believe, needs 60.4% to get to 1237. Can Ted Cruz get 60.4% of the remaining delegates? No, I don't think there's really any way that he can. I do think he can get 45% of the remaining delegates and keep Trump from getting to 1237. I think that's a possibility, and I think that's probably the best case scenario. And I think that's, if I were Jeb Bush and I were going to have this meeting and people were going to end, that would be what I would lay out is, listen, everybody needs to get behind Ted Cruz right now, stop Donald Trump to getting to 1237, and let's sort this out at the convention however it might be sorted out. Because right now, that's really the only chance that's left to stop Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I want to throw one question out to both of you, because Leon, you mentioned a little about how Donald Trump being like a party-ending disaster, and I think for a lot of people, I've got to stop leaving stuff on my desk. I want to grab it when I start talking. And as I say, in the middle of a live show. Well, no, we're not live on tape. Aaron, let us know when we start recording. So. The point about Trump being a party-ending disaster, there are a lot of people pumping the fist in the air. It's like, oh, yeah, we're going to kill the establishment, and the establishment is going to be destroyed, and fire and blah, kill the establishment. I don't think people seem to realize that, A, to most of America, the establishment, the conservative movement, and the Tea Party are the same thing. B, if the GOP goes down, it takes the rest with them. And C, the people cheering it on are just going to create a new establishment to complain against, just because that's what they do.
Yeah. So, am I to respond to that, or is no?
Sure.
Sure. I mean, so I guess my point. Listen, I'm a guy who, and Noah's probably on the other side of the fence of this. I actually can find a reasonable argument to say we needed to have some guy who's going to take a Barry Goldwater style loss and have some sort of realignment like that kind of 1964 election did, and that would have been fine. And in fact, I think Ted Cruz might be that candidate. I think that it could be Ted Cruz might go out there and lose 40 to 45 states like a lot of the Rubio people are saying. That might be real, and I would actually be more or less okay with that happening compared with Donald Trump getting the nomination, because I think that Donald Trump would not only lose, but he would basically damage the GOP brand irreversibly, to the point that, I mean, as much as we think that they haven't stood for much in the last few years, he's out there running on an openly protectionist message. He doesn't talk about lower taxes. He doesn't talk about less government. He doesn't talk about any kind of social. It's about nothing but Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump is disliked by 67% of America. And if that becomes kind of what our party stands for, is we're not politically correct, and that's basically it. It's going to be a long road to come back from.
Yeah, there are parts of that I agree with. I certainly agree with you, Leon, about what Donald Trump would do to the conservative movement. It would gut conservatism to the point where it would not resemble anything other than a political vehicle designed to win, and its functionality would be to win so that when it loses, it ceases to have all meaning and all coherence and eventually collapses. The conservative movement itself is built around ideas, and that's how it survived. However, I don't think that Ted Cruz would do as poorly as you suggest he would. I don't think he'll improve on Mitt Romney's map at all.
He might not. He might not because his opponent is terrible.
But his approval is terrible. I think he would lose, but I don't think he would lose as poorly as 45 states. I don't think Donald Trump would lose that poorly, frankly. But I do think he would lose. However, I don't know that the Republican Party as a whole really needs this in order to as some sort of great cleansing fire. The Republican Party is the only functional Republican or functioning political party in the country. Since Barack Obama has performed quite a bit of overreach in 2009 to 2010, the Republican Party became totally ascendant. Today, it controls more of the country than it has controlled in almost 100 years. More than a majority of the country is under 100% Republican control, both chambers of the legislature or a unicameral chamber and the governorship. They control the House, they control the Senate, and they are inches from the very last goal, the perfect trifecta of having the White House, both chambers of Congress, and most of the country under Republican control, and they are putting a gun to their heads and shooting themselves. Right at the edge of that final ultimate victory. They've run out of the race, their most electable candidate, and now they're going to go for some sort of a purity play or redefine conservatism as a whole. And the only thing I can think of that explains that is that Barack Obama really broke the Republican Party.
It's actually it's an interesting and I think a correct point. And I think that's where a lot of people's frustration is, because we have since 2010. I mean, 2012 is what it was. We just, unfortunately, we picked the best out of like about 85 bad candidates. But we've increased governorships. We've increased governorships. Took back the House. We took back the Senate, and we're at a point where we're about to nominate someone who. His three principles seem to be anti-immigrant, anti-trade, and stick your finger in there and figure out the rest. Not only would that lose the White House, and I think that would completely undo everything we've done for the past 8 days. And it's something of course I forget who it is because that required doing research, but someone I've seen keep tweeting over and over again where if Donald Trump did actually have a conversation with Bill Clinton before he started running that this is like some kind of master plan, I can't imagine it unfolding any more than it actually did. And I mean, no, I'm not wearing tinfoil under my cap, but I want to talk about Cruz a little bit. Where I know Noah, you had said about how when he laid out his plan and how he originally didn't think he needed to increase the base and increase anyone other than evangelicals and conservatives and the disputed notion that the reason why McCain and Romney lost, it was because of all these conservatives allegedly stayed home. Mm-hmm. So he got Carly Fiorina's endorsement today. I think there's a good chance that Jeb could be. There's a good chance that Jeb could be endorsing. Lindsey Graham of all people, and God bless him for this. A week after he's made a joke about shooting him dead, comes out and says that he's our best chance to beat Trump, and he's on board. Right. If there's enough of a swath of people that normally have been feuding with Cruz for the past 6 years, get on board with him. I mean, can he unite the party?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you've made a pretty convincing case that he can. Right? You've just outlined a whole bunch of people who are decidedly anti-Cruz to the point. I mean, there are people in the Senate who don't think he's a good human being, who think he's a really bad, self-interested person. And they will fall in line. There are a lot of people who are going to fall in line behind Donald Trump, by the way, too. And that is part of the reason why it's going to destroy the party, because a lot of those that won't will have to be ejected from the apparatus. But at least Ted Cruz would keep the party together as the nominee. But he started this campaign with a really flawed theory of the electorate, and it was essentially based on myth. And actually, Leon, your colleague Dan McLaughlin over at RedState has done a good job of outlining why this is a myth. Amy Walter over at the Cook Political Report too. Both of them have identified why the notion that somehow there are 4 million voters that are conservatives in waiting that just don't turn out when the nominee is not conservative enough is bunk. It's not supported by any actual evidence. It's based on some really faulty early reporting that was since proven inaccurate. And his second theory was that he would be able to turn out a lot of evangelical voters, and those voters would turn out for Ted Cruz and deliver him a victory, not only in the primaries, but in the general as well, something to the tune of 30 million evangelicals. And a lot of evangelicals are turning out in the primary, but they're turning out to vote for Trump. Ted Cruz lost evangelicals in South Carolina. He lost them in Nevada. He lost them in Tennessee, where they made up 3/4 of the electorate. He lost them in Mississippi, where they made up like almost 8 out of 10 voters were evangelicals. So he's losing this cohort of voters, which is founded in this theory that for conservatives that they don't have to change. The world around them has to change. You guys are fine. You don't need to expand the base of the electorate. All you need to do is do what you're doing and do more of it. And then all these magical sleeper cells of Republican voters will awaken and deliver you victories. And that was not true. Well, Ted Cruz is waking up for that, and he's becoming a better candidate for it.
So that kind of segues into what I was going to say, which is that I think that Ted Cruz, at long last, at least, has awakened to that reality. And I've watched Ted Cruz very closely throughout this campaign. I saw his pre-Super Tuesday stump speech probably 20 times. It's the same. This is what I'm going to do day one in office. I'm going to repeat all these, executive orders and such and such. I mean, I could probably recite it to you verbatim. Super Tuesday, and I stayed up. I was up until like probably 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning local time, so about 2 o'clock. And Amanda Carpenter was on there, and I wrote a post about this the next day. And just blasting and just stop with this crap. I mean, it's not working. You got to do something different. Don't say I'm the most evangelical. You got to do something. And I think Ted Cruz, I don't know if he's, listening directly to Amanda Carpenter, but to, I think, his credit from that point on, if you watch his stump speech now, it's completely different. I mean, he talks about things like, he takes some stuff from Bernie Sanders. I feel the pain of people who are struggling with their student loans. That's a Rubio / Sanders message. He talks about, people who have lost their jobs. He's really, I think, turned around his message that he's not like a revival preacher who's stomping on the floor and waiting for applause after one line. He's adapting a different way. And this is more of the Ted Cruz that I was actually kind of familiar with before this campaign started. I mean, he came and, to our very first RedState gathering, and everybody walked out of there thinking, man, this guy's a rock star. At the time, he was just the Solicitor General of Texas. And this guy who's been kind of stomping around the campaign trail was remarkably more one note than the Ted Cruz that I saw back then. And I'm glad to see him getting back to kind of some of the rhetorical flexibility that he's lacked thus far in this campaign. And I hope that it'll be able to help push him over the top in the end.
I don't know if it's like a tick or if there's like something happened with Republicans when they announce they're running for president, they just completely lose their personality. But I look at Ted Cruz and I think about the 1996 race, which I mean, it was college, so let's just say I wasn't focused that close in politics. But I remember the day after Bob Dole lost, he was on David Letterman, and he was funny, he was personable, he seemed like the kind of guy that you could hang out with. And where was this guy for the past 6 months when he was doing the grumpy old man shtick? And I've heard a lot of people have the same people who I expect, obviously, it's people from RedState, because I mean, you guys and Cruz pretty much came up together, who have actually met him and had the same personality and saw him, doing the Princess Bride stuff, and seen him like when people like will catch him on like video cameras on like just like on the stump, just joking around with his daughters, or even whenever TMZ catches up with them and he can handle that well. Is it something where Republicans don't want to show that on the stump, where they think that they can't show it, or do they just like do they almost lose their brain when they start running?
So this is the most infuriating moments of the 2012 campaign for me were a couple of things that I saw Mitt Romney do that I only saw him do twice. Number one, he did a radio interview with, I think it was Jan Michelson in Iowa, and Michelson angered him, which is the first time I'd ever seen him angry. And for the first time in however long Mitt Romney has been running for president, I thought, this is a guy I could vote for president. And he flashed it, and I posted it at RedState. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable, and I never saw it again. The other thing was, like a month before the election, in front of the White House press corps, Mitt Romney got up and gave this speech where he was just hysterical, making fun of himself, making fun of his family, the perception of him as being a rich person. He had a great line about, when this campaign is done at the end of the day, Ann and I just like to, or he was in like a tux, like a long-tailed tux. I'm glad that I'm able to be up here in the clothes that Ann and I like to relax in at the end of the day. He was just making, and it was funny. I was like, where is this guy on the campaign trail? Why does he feel like he needs to be a robot? If there's something that Trump is accurately teaching people, it's not this crap about protectionism and you need to drop the F-bomb every other speech, you need to insult people. It's that, be relatable, be funny, be entertaining. People want that from their presidential candidate. They want something more than just a series of competently delivered talking points. And I know that Cruz can access that, and I hope that he does, and he's able to do it going forward on a regular basis.
My fear is that everybody takes the wrong lessons away from Donald Trump's run. I really would like them to see what you said, let their hair down a little bit, be more personal and personable. But what I fear we're going to see is a lot more aggression, of goading, of being divisive, and they'll believe that they'll be letting their hair down by behaving more boorishly. Because it worked for Donald Trump. And I feel like unless there's a real thorough postmortem on Marco Rubio's campaign and everybody really scientifically determines that his approach to Donald Trump, to weakening Donald Trump, reflected poorly on him rather, I feel like everybody's going to adopt the Trump shtick, and it's going to make our politics a lot worse.
Right, so that's Trump though, right? I mean, I'm sorry, John, but that's... being the angry yelling guy, that's Trump. That's who he is as a person. So Rubio tried to do it. It didn't work as well. I think it may have helped stop Trump's rise, but I'm not saying everybody needs to be, angry, because that's Trump's stuff, but everybody needs to be more themselves. I mean, whatever they are, let us see into what you're like at home when you're hanging out with your kids. I mean, don't have everything be so controlled and scripted. And I hope that's the lesson that people, whatever that is, maybe you're a happy, optimistic, funny, person. You're not Donald Trump. You're not angry all the time. Just let people in. And that's what I think. It reminds, every politician tries to be like Tiger Woods. They just have this wall. They don't let people in. They have the same rehearsed, and people are sick of it. People are sick of it. They want to see who you really are as a person. And I hope that people take that away.
And not to mention when people say, and this actually drives me insane when they say, well, I hope people are taking notes and seeing what Donald Trump did and, copying it. Copying Donald Trump would require getting in a time machine, going back 20, 25 years, and starting a career as a tabloid celebrity, building up a reality show, building up a brand where you're just like, a last name and no one even knows, what you do, or you're like where exactly your money comes from, just that you have a lot of it. And to the point where when you go out and not you're running for president, no one questions you and you get all this media attention no matter what stupid things comes out of your mouth. I don't see how the Republican Party or any politician can emulate that.
No, yeah, that's fair. That's not an inaccurate thing to say at all. But my fear is that politicians have a tendency to lose or learn the wrong lessons from adversity. And I'm not underestimating their capacity to shoot themselves in the foot. It certainly seems like that would be a poor bet.
And we're getting to a point to wrap up, so I'm going to give both of you a 2-point question. Noah, we'll start with you. 1, over under when Rubio drops out. 2, what's your prediction for next Tuesday?
I think after Florida is the better bet. And I don't have any predictions for next Tuesday. I think I've been very bad at predicting what's going to happen in this race. So I know what should happen, and it should be that Republican voters come to their senses. But I'm not going to put a lot of money down on that one. So I don't know what's going to happen. But I would be surprised to see the trajectory of the race reverse itself dramatically, which is good news for Trump.
Leon?
So I've actually had some level of personal interaction with both Marco Rubio and John Kasich. And Marco Rubio, I have to say, is not the kind of person who will ignore forever and ever and ever people telling him you need to get out, you need to get out, you need to get out, especially people who he likes and respects. And I know many of those people are saying that in his ear right now. So I know that whatever it is that he's saying right now, I do feel like if he continues to hear it from people enough, he may drop out before Florida. And not even for the sake of Florida. I think the die may already be cast in Florida because of the early voting. But really what I think a lot of people are saying to him is, look, it's not just Florida. There are many other states on the ballot. There's Missouri, there's North Carolina, where your presence on the ballot is going to hurt the ability of somebody else to win. So I would say at least even toss odds that he does withdraw before Florida, just on the basis of that advice. I think there is 0% chance that the equivalent is true for Kasich, because Kasich is probably the most notorious asshole in Washington, D.C., and he does not listen to anyone but himself. So that I guess is my prediction. What was the second part? What is going to happen next Tuesday? I think that Trump will probably win most of the states on Tuesday. I think that Cruz might pick off Missouri. I think that if Marco Rubio does drop out of the race, Cruz has a reasonable chance of taking North Carolina, although I would still favor Trump in that. I think all the other races, Trump would have to be favored to win, except for perhaps Ohio. And I think that if Rubio drops out, it improves Kasich's chances of taking Ohio to probably even toss in that state. Otherwise, I would say that Trump takes all the rest of the states.
So like we said at the beginning of the show, everything's terrible.
But that having been said, I mean, other than Ohio and Florida, it's not the end of the world. I mean, if he's beating Cruz or whoever by 10 or 12 points, you know, he's gaining 5 or 6 delegates at a time. That's not too bad. Ohio and Florida, of course, the big prizes. And really, if you look at it, people talk about the winner-take-all states. There's only a combined total of 505 delegates in those winner-take-all states. 505. That's it. And, you know, Donald Trump right now is sitting at less than 400 delegates. So even if he gets each and every single one of those, he's still going to come up well short of what he needs. So, yes, the field does need to coalesce quickly, but it's not the end of the world, even if he comes out winning pretty much every state on next Tuesday.
Okay, and we'll leave it there. Thank you for watching another exciting episode of the EveryJoe podcast, hashtag EJPC. EveryJoe.com. If you want to play along at home, you could, as you're watching this podcast, you could tweet out all the different things we got wrong or how drastically the news has changed between 4:02 p.m. Eastern and whenever our producer gets this uploaded. For Leon Wolf, RedState.com, Noah Rothman, CommentaryMagazine.com. I'm Brodigan. We'll see you next week. Peace.